Hello, I'm Sam from Jessup Says. The focus of my channel is to share and educate on how to buy less, buy better. It's not necessarily about buying less things, it's about buying something that fits its purpose perfectly and serves you for as long as possible. A sneaker is something that I think we universally agree is probably the go-to shoe for most people. Now, the definition of what a sneaker is might actually vary place to place, but what I'm talking about is anything that's sort of sports inspired and comfort focused. Let's say somewhat fashionable. Yes, that even includes things like the New Balance V550 or the various other New Balance dad shoes. But today we're taking a bit of a detour from the more niche brands that we typically discuss here to talk about an awesome classic dad sneakers that I recently picked up from Adidas. Today I want to attempt to answer, can a pair of Adidas sneakers actually be buy less, buy better? These are the Adidas Super Sambas in Navy Suede, keeping it triple white stripes. Now, I didn't buy these from Adidas directly. They don't actually sell this model here in Australia at all. I ended up getting them through a local bespoke tailor named Mr. Cuff, who is based here in Melbourne, Australia. So onto the details of the shoes that I picked up. The style is the Super Samba, or on the box it's called Sam Super Suede. Basically pretty cool, they're named after me. The color is navy, the material is suede. They are made in Indonesia. This particular size is a US 7.5 or a UK 7, so true to size for me. And they cost $269.99 Australian, which is around about 175 USD. The original Adidas Samba is a true legend in the sneaker world, and this shoe has its origins associated with that shoe. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to talk about the history of the Samba family. Back in the late 1940s, the founder of Adidas, Adi Dassler, had this idea to make a shoe that could handle soccer on all the sorts of different fields that were common at the time. Fast forward to the 1950s and the FIFA World Cup was being held in Brazil. And Adidas had a great idea to create a cool new shoe, the Samba, which would be ready to make a splash on the world stage at this Brazilian World Cup. Now, there was a small problem. The original Samba was actually designed for cold European winters like they get in the UK. And wouldn't you know it, Brazil is a particularly warm climate, especially in June and July. So what did they do? Well, the Samba that Adidas had already designed had big cleats and studs all over it, and they knew that at the time that was not going to be acceptable for the Brazilian football and the Brazilian fields that they had there. They went back to the drawing board to design something completely new for this World Cup. Now, that shoe was named the Samba after the Brazilian dance and the music style samba. By connecting it to Brazil's rich history, it instantly became a must-have for every player getting ready for the game. And you know what? The strategy totally worked. The Adidas Samba became one of the most famous shoes ever. It's right up there with the Stan Smiths as one of the best sellers out of Adidas. I think it's actually just second. So it was clearly an early success, moving through the mid-1980s, and Adidas decided to give the classic Samba a bit of a modern upgrade for the times. And that's how the Super Samba was born. The Super Samba had extra padding to make it super comfortable, had a different kind of sole, and all of the different features that they added made it an even better choice for everyday wear. You might also remember it from the movie Trainspotting, where Ewan McGregor, one of the best actors of all time, rocks a pair of Super Sambas in the famous Choose Life scene. After that, the popularity of the Super Samba kind of went up and down in terms of its fashion and fashionability. And here in Australia, you might not have ever come across a pair. I didn't ever in New Zealand that I can remember, as they're just not that common here. And typically people wear the standard Samba. And that typical Samba design is available very easily and very readily here. So let's dive into what I think after about a month of wearing this pair. Upon pulling these shoes on for the very first time, and pretty much every time since then, I can understand why people wear sneakers for most of their wear and most of their days. They are extremely comfortable. Typically my feet, and in the past I've gravitated towards Nike for my more sportier footwear, but it is really nice to find a pair of Adidas that fit me impeccably. In terms of sizing, I sized up a half size from the 6.5 UK that I typically am to a 7 UK, which is pretty typical for sneakers in my experience. Ample space in the toe box. Overall, it's just a really comfortable and foot-hugging sneaker, but it does have a nice wide toe box, so yeah, I'm really impressed with the fit that Adidas have achieved here. Now, being that this is Adidas, and although their original marketing ploy was we're made from leather, I don't know if this translates to a super high quality of leather or not. I've watched a ton of Rose Amble talking about sneakers, and I don't know how much of this shoe is actually leather or not, but thankfully for my shoe collection, I don't want to cut these in half, and my skills are not as a leather worker. So let me just tell you about what my impressions are of the material. Now, the main upper material is a lovely deep dark blue navy suede, and from what I can see from the edges, It's probably over about 1 millimeter. It's hard to know exactly. Grain, or the nap on it, is nice and tight and fluffy. As far as I can discern, it seems to be a pretty decent quality suede, although suede is the lowest quality of all the leather sections. It's definitely not going to wear out anywhere, and it provides a pretty good looking and definitely a comfortable outer material that seems to be pretty wear resistant, and is definitely much more abrasion resistant than the nylon might be on a typical sneaker. Overall, I've got real no complaints about the suede, and the suede that they've used from my perspective seems to be pretty decent quality and is holding up pretty well. Now, it might not be the same kind of quality as my Aldens, but again, I don't have an objective way to evaluate that. The next material that you're probably looking at would be the white bits that are the Adidas branding. Now, that's the 3 stripes on either side and the rear panel. And these 2 parts to my eye are probably not leather. They're designed to be the smooth side of the leather, but it's pretty obvious that it's an imitation leather. As you can see, the felt and the plastic under, or whatever it is that's covering it. I always find this part particularly sad and a bit confusing to me, because I know they're not structural pieces of the shoe, so they're not going to wear out. They don't really benefit from being of a high quality. But from my perspective, when you're a brand, wouldn't you want people to associate your brand with the best quality material? Like, it just feels like you're undervaluing your brand by saying, yeah, we're happy for our brand to be printed on this crappy, not leather material that looks and is meant to make you feel like it's leather. It feels fake and cheap to me. And I think any brand who does that, it seems like they're just kind of undervaluing and undermining their own brand and their own branding. I know that big brands like this place so much value on their brand, so I don't know whether they've even considered it to that extent, or if they're just so focused on profitability that they just don't care. But to me, that's always a bit of a shame. But maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm a little bit unusual. Next up is the inside of the shoe. The heel and the counter are fully lined with more fake leather, but it's an extremely soft polyurethane material, which comes up to and around the arch and the insole, sort of the outside of the foot. It sort of makes all that area much more wear resistant than if it was just a fabric lining, like the lining that they have that goes around the toe and the front of the shoe. That lining that's at the front is quite a stiff material. It's probably designed to wick away sweat. It's not a material that's going to wear out quickly, or hopefully not smell too much, though at the same time, it's not something that you're going to want to wear barefoot in, as it feels to my little feet a little scratchy on the top, and I don't think that's going to be super comfy, so definitely a sock shoe, this one. The insole isn't removable, but it's very comfortable and has a bit of arch support, so not really a problem at all. The final material is the outsole, which is a really nice, dense and hard feeling rubber with a foam midsole, and the back half you can see sort of the wedge section there, which makes it very comfortable. Now, I've worn these on walks and a variety of different terrain, and they look like they're pretty much still new. So it looks like they're going to be a very durable and very hard wearing sole, as far as I can tell, anecdotally. The next thing I usually talk about is construction, but it's just all glue, and that's not ideal, but it is what it is. Cement construction has its place, and like most sneakers, this is a cement construction shoe. It lacks any sidewall stitching that you'd like to see, or you'd see on something like a cup sole, but I guess that's just because of the design with the sort of front vulcanized looking bit and then the wedge sole at the back. Oh, and the laces are nice, classic, thick, flat ones. They feel a little low quality and they're starting to fray already, but they're fine, not much to say on that one. On to how I've been wearing them, and as I'm still living out of that same suitcase, you can probably imagine all the fits. But what I've been enjoying the most is wearing them with my white jeans from Robato. There's just something about the white stripes and the white jeans that I really like. Of course, my navy work shirt looks great with that, even this top. Pretty much everything works with them. They're just a nice pair of cool, funky sneakers, and I really like the variety of combinations. So after all of that, it sort of begs the question, are these buy less, buy better sneakers? And it's a question that I've been mulling over since I first put them on, because the answer isn't immediately obvious, or it wasn't to me. And I think it gave me a bit of perspective as thinking about what it's being compared to and what the segment it is that it competes in. And that is sneakers around that $250 Australian mark. And after standing in a line over the weekend, surrounded by normies wearing their jeans and sneakers, I realized that the athletic shoe segment is quite misaligned to its target of athletic environments, and this probably needs to have a little bit of a look at itself and target the more casual shoes. Most of the shoes that I saw had synthetic uppers, which we all know don't last very long, especially to abrasions like you'd expect of a normal day of wear, like rubbing things on the back of your desk chair or whatever it is that you do in a normal day of wear. The original purpose of these shoes, the original intent being something like running, which isn't going to have an impact on the upper too much. You're not really rubbing your toes on anything from the upper perspective when you're running. Basically, I just don't think these kinds kinds of shoes are designed or even well suited to the job of being casual shoes. So for this comparison, I want to focus on something a lot more similar to what this shoe is actually designed for. I think to make it fair, I also want to look for something that is made of suede or a leather of some form. I don't want to compare this shoe to anything that has that running style sole or is particularly athletic in look. It needs to be a sneaker, not a runner. Also, I don't want anything that looks too much like an Air Force One or a Jordan or like a basketball sneaker, as that's just too different in terms of style. Now, to find that competitor, I went on the website of the local Hype Beast store, which is named Platypus. Surprisingly, there aren't really a whole lot of options that nail the same sort of vibe of a casual sneaker that's not like designed to be for running. Well, I mean, Adidas have the market cornered on that, as pretty much the only other option is the normal Sambas. The best other option that I can find, and the closest option that I can find, came from Lacoste, the Alligator brand, with their base shot premium suede 223, which goes for $169.99 or around about 110 USD. This sneaker is described as inspired by the iconic 1996 Portofino tennis shoe, featuring classic lines and authentic construction. Now, I haven't seen this shoe in person, but I have owned Lacoste before, and I can use that experience to inform my theoretical assessment of the shoe. The upper is once again suede, and from the photos, it looks like it's probably the exact same suede as the ones being used by Adidas. From the color to the fuzziness, they look very comparable, if not identical. So let's say on the suede, the upper, they're even. Now we look at the edging and the lining, and they say it's synthetic leather, so it's probably once again the same thing. One thing that does confuse me though is the reference to authentic construction. Now, I saw a reference on one website as it having a leather midsole, which if true would make it sensational value at $169.99, as the midsole that's used by Adidas is some sort of composite foam board of some kind. It's not leather, definitely. Now, that reference isn't actually on the Lacoste website or any other website, just on this one weird niche website, so I'm choosing to think that it's probably not true. The other thing that I would look for to see how quality this is would be, again, that sidewall stitch, as this looks like it's got a bit more of a cup sole to it. Once again, looking at the photos, it doesn't look like it has this. It's basically just a glued on cup sole. Compared to the sort of multi-piece construction on the Super Sambas, they're arguably pretty similar in terms of their likely thickness and the hardness of materials, and therefore how long they last. So once again, from the upper and the outsole, they're pretty similar. Now, that's just what I can see from a few photos and looking online, but in my experience, having owned and knowing people who have owned both the Adidas and Lacoste, there is a reason why I would choose Adidas every single time. They actually seem to last, whereas Lacoste just tend to not. So there it is, my fairly new pair of Adidas Super Sambas in Navy Suede. A pair of sneakers that I'm really enjoying wearing for when I need to be a bit more active than a comfortable pair of loafers allows. And a pair that, at the very least, compared to what else is in the market, seem to be made in a way that, again, is comparatively buy less, buy better. No, they aren't welted, but they also aren't a pair of running shoes, and they are far better suited to standing in a line outside a bakery for an hour to get a loaf of bread than a running shoe is. Or at least they seem to be, they are to me. Thanks very much for watching. Links are in the description as always, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Cheers.